Wait a couple more minutes to see if Fenton is wandering around here.
Did you not see him, Tom? Did you not see him, Happy?
Leaving, are you?
No. Only. You don't leave.
All right, we will recommence. We have a brief report which is going to be expanded upon here, right, Sally? Is that what's...
Correct. Yes.
And we have a guest, Kristen Price, to give us an update on Enviroschools, so go for it.
Thank you. So I will just get the ball rolling. Kristen Price is from Toimata Foundation, and she is going to give you an update on the census that was undertaken at the end of last year, and she'll also give you an overview of the national perspective of Enviroschools nationwide. So I just will start off with just a little bit of an update on TLA funding, which is something that Enviroschools Hawke's Bay has struggled with a bit over the years. Up until the last 2 years, we haven't had any TLA support. However, that 2 years ago, HDC came on board, and then last year, Napier City Council came on board. And unfortunately, we've just heard this week that their waste minimisation levy funding, which they've given us in the past, has been repurposed for other activities this year. So we are looking to work with staff still, and hopefully we can get some funding to some degree from them. Perhaps from, there's a lot of water conservation activities and projects being undertaken over the next year or so, and so there could be an opportunity for us to tap into some of that project money. A lot of the Enviroschools activities are all over water for life and water conservation, so it would be a good fit for those councils to see that and support us.
So Hastings' previous commitment was how much?
We had $10,000 from each of those two TLAs, so not a huge amount of money. We've just had some good news from Central Hawke's Bay District Council. For the very first time, they've come on board. Kristen and I met with staff there this morning, and we have secured $10,000 worth of funding from the council, and that will help with their waste education and other environmental and sustainability education opportunities down in Central Hawke's Bay. So we're very excited about that. On Monday, I represented Kristen and the Toimata submission at the Wairau District Council, and we haven't got the outcome of that yet, but hopeful that we may get some funding from them in due course from Wairau, so that would be good.
And Napier is $15,000 for the next 3 years.
Well, there hasn't been any from Napier, no, it's still under negotiation.
It's not
No funding from Napier or Hastings.
Napier has put out a press statement saying they've given
Oh, have they?
$15,000 for 3 years.
Told us that yet.
How recently was that, Tom?
Yesterday.
Oh, okay, well, there you go.
Oh well done, Cameron. Well, last we heard they were looking at other budgets, so there you go.
Great.
Good.
All right.
That's excellent news. Cool. So that's good. And of course, this council is helping out with more funding support and budget support going forward as well, which is a great move, and it will mean we can market the program more and reach into more schools, which will be awesome, as well as hold events for our students. So that's really good. One highlight I'd like to share with you is a proposal that we are a partner in with Air New Zealand, tapping into the Air New Zealand Sustainability Fund. This is a joint project with Cape to City and DOC and EIT, and they are looking to expand the Cape to City program at EIT with training teachers, and Enviroschools is going to be a partner in that. And we just found out recently that that funding has been approved by Air New Zealand, and that's $410,000 over a 3-year period. And so it'll be a great initiative for more environmental education and getting teachers more confident about using the environment for education. Other highlights just in the recent months is we've had teacher workshops for Enviroschools. So that's introduced the program to 2 schools that have been on our waiting list, Hohepa and Kiruru School, and both very keen to become Enviroschools, and we're looking to bring them on in the next few months. And we also had another workshop in May out at Estelle School, and that was all about helping teachers understand the reflection process of Enviroschools and how they need to take stock on their Enviroschools journey from time to time and find out how far they've come. And it's a great way of celebrating those activities. I've talked about Central Hawke's Bay and the good news there, and so this will help our new facilitator down there, Kate Luff. She joined the program as a contractor at the end of last year, and she has been getting up to speed with the schools who are currently Enviroschools, and so she's making great progress and is having a good relationship with the teaching staff and students down with the 6 schools that she's currently working with. Kate is actually the chairperson of Central Hawke's Bay Safer Communities, and so she is quite closely linked with the Central Hawke's Bay District Council, so already. So now having her as an Enviroschools facilitator, she will just have that closer relationship with the council and staff, so it's worked out really well. Other activities have been happening. All the schools are busy working on vision maps and mapping their place and how they fit into their school and their community, and all of these activities have a focus on the environment and sustainability, and it's just great to see these empowered students working on ideas and carrying them through to fruition, presenting to their boards and their teaching staff, and then reaching an outcome and having those projects actually come into fruition, which has been great. We have a lot of, we encourage activities and connections with our community and all of the schools. It obviously just goes beyond the school gate, so it reaches into the family home. We make connections with community groups and different marae, and help with all those aspects. Whatever the school might need, we can make those connections and help them if they'd like us to. Just finally, I'll just report on our most recent highlight was Mayfair Kindergarten in Hastings has just become a Green Gold Enviro School. They had a celebration last Friday night, which Drew kindly attended for me, and so they now can call themselves a Green Gold Enviro School, and we have presented them with a lovely certificate and a flag, and so they have everything that they do in their community. They know they're an Enviro School, and those students just take all those messages home, so it's been really good to see. One thing that I am thinking of implementing towards the end of this year, if Council is in agreement, is inviting schools to come into the Council at the end of the year and perhaps doing a little celebration or presentation of some of these achievements. Some regions already do that, and so we can just have them all who have achieved a certain level come in at once and present them with their certificates, and then they can see actually what regional council does a bit. I can show them around this place as well, and so I can talk further about that if that's something that would be of interest later in the year. Okay.
Why would kids want to come into this room here? There's nothing on the walls that says what we do. We need to do something about it, James.
They might have some ideas
They might.
about redecorating.
Maybe we should put some of their stuff
Exactly.
up.
Chair, I understand we are just having a chat, so it's all good. Just wondering though, are there any aspects of the work program in the next 12 months through you to the CE that we could deliver some specific outcomes through the Enviroschools model? And I don't have any particular thing in mind other than, say, for example, Pandora Pond through the school there. That could be a good connection as just one example, and another means of us as far as our delivery KPIs go, such as they are. There could be an opportunity to utilise the program that is already going and through the use of probably not a lot more in the way of funding, get a specific outcome for a specific project that we have on.
Look, I might slightly throw this one to Sally, but before I do, I'd make the observation that at the moment we do try to link in some of our planting activities with schools and also some of our science activity as well, and whether or not in the program and in the curriculum you see scope to expand that more. Sally, it'd be interesting to get your view.
I've actually been talking a little bit with Cameron Burton, who is the Environmental Services Manager at Napier City Council, and about the whole Ahuriri Master Plan development. And I see there's a good opportunity for us to be working with those schools that especially feed into the estuary and around the port. They may not all be Enviro schools, but I still think it's a good opportunity to reach all those schools and be talking about not only planting but stormwater and those sorts of things. So those discussions are happening. He's working on a plan, and we'll just keep niggling away. We can still do our own stormwater activities with the schools, which would be a start. So, but yeah.
Well, certainly I think in terms of Napier and Hastings, education around stormwater impacts are really important. But in terms of the increased activity that we have around fencing, planting, enhancement, etc., is that where there could be more effort from the schools, or yeah, there is? Okay. Right.
Yeah.
That's something we'll take up offline and explore.
I mean, I'm talking existing budgets, obviously.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Anything that helps.
Great.
Sally, you mentioned that there was a waiting list of schools
Yes.
coming on board.
Yes.
So you don't have any problems with schools wanting to sign up then, obviously?
No, it's always been a bit of a cat and mouse. We have never had a heap of funding to grow the program, and so we've sort of been a bit bound by that. But things are going to move a bit this year now with some of this increased funding from the TLAs. The two schools that were on the waiting list, Kiaru and Hohepa, are coming on board. They've already got their agreements, and so.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
And following on from that, just to expand my knowledge of Enviroschools, it covers kindergartens and primary and intermediates, does it?
Yeah, all schools. So
Schools.
the kindergarten sector is, we have a partnership with both the Napier Kindergarten Association and the Herotonga Association. So they have their own teaching staff who have been trained as Enviroschools facilitators. So the contractors who I have just work in the school system, and the early childhood system is run on a slightly different model. So, yeah.
Cool. So can we...
Okay, so I can pass you over to Kristen now, and she's just going to give you an update also.
Oh, tēnā koutou katoa. Yes, it's great to be here. Thank you for some time. So, yeah, as Sally said, I'm going to talk a bit of big picture stuff about Enviroschools nationally, and also share some of our latest research. At the end of last year, we conducted a nationwide census of all Enviroschools and have a very rich amount of information to share about that, and I'm going to share a small amount of that today with you. So what is Enviroschools? So you'll all have your own experiences, and we're hearing questions about building our knowledge. But it's a holistic framework. It came from a council community partnership in the Waikato region. So it's all about connected, resilient, sustainable communities. As we've been hearing, it's a facilitated program. So there's a person, an expert working alongside schools in their communities. And it's all about empowering young people to take action in ways that are meaningful for them on what's important to them, but also helping them understand what's important to their community what's important to council, what are the actual things going on in the environment, so that they can make really informed decisions about where they want to take action. It operates at quite a significant scale, so there are over 1,100 Enviroschools in New Zealand, so nationally about a third of schools, and a smaller portion of that very big ECE sector. And you can see in the Hawke's Bay lower percentage of schools, and that kind of alludes to what Sally's been saying, that the capacity has been a bit more limited here, partly because it's been yourselves, but not so much with strong support from the territorial authorities. But really good involvement in the early childhood sector here with those great partnerships with the kindergarten associations. Early childhood, secondary, that we talked about, over 150,000 children and young people actively participating. So, you know, we know from the census, we can tell what the roles of all the schools are, but now we know that these children are actually actively involved in the Enviroschools program on a day-to-day basis, working with a lot of teaching staff who are on their own learning journey as part of this, and definitely, as Sally said, reaching right into families, right into communities. So nationally, I'm from Tuamata Foundation. We work with our partner organisation Te Māori Tau, who help us hold Māori perspectives in a really strong way. And we run 2 programs nationwide, Te Ahutura, through our Māori immersion, working with Māori communities and Enviroschools. 17-18 situation, you know, yourselves in that really foundational role. Partnerships with the kindergarten associations, Hastings, Napier, you know, we've been talking about that. We'll be adding Central Hawke's Bay's logo there shortly. Hopefully Wairoa, we'll find out about that, and then some corporate involvement from Pan Pac Forest Products, which is useful as well. So we're trying to make quite significant change through Enviroschools, you know, sustainable, resilient, connected, joined up communities. You don't do that as one agency working alone, so we have a highly collaborative model ourselves and Te Māori Tau at the base, perform as a national hub, regional coordinators in every region of New Zealand, so that's the role that Sally has. Teams of facilitators then working with schools, so it's a long-term process. The facilitators, a guide, a coach, a mentor, working alongside principally adults in the school, so quite different to a lot of educational initiatives that go into schools where it's someone delivering key messages to children. This is a person working more with the adults in the school to facilitate a whole process of change long-term. Huge input from teachers, caretakers, property managers on boards, lots of people in the schools building this into their roles day to day, and then a huge range of outcomes that we're seeing. Financially, the hub that we hold, that's central government funding. We have a long-term funding relationship with the Ministry for the Environment. Regional implementation, as we've seen, is, you know, a lot of council involvement, kindergarten associations and other community partners, and we just looked at that slide earlier. The schools and centres themselves are putting a lot of their own resources in, and this is often we often get the question, what about the Ministry of Education? Where are they in all of this? Well, one of the places they are is that we're working a lot in the system they fund with the people they fund, and they're putting their time in. And we're also seeing there's a national environmental education for sustainability strategy that James knows a bit about. That's a DOC, MFE, MOE initiative under the previous government, but that's starting to continue, and I think there's some changes in the Ministry of Ed happening now where they might be getting a little more involved in this work, which would be great to see. And what we know is from some analysis work we've had done, really extensive, this community building approach at Enviroschools really draws in extensive donated resources from the community. And that's actually, in terms of this thing's worth about $10 million a year, and it's the community support that's actually the largest portion of it, which is great to see. So councils, so here on the left, we're working with most regional councils now. Taranaki Regional Council have come on board now as of the 1st of July. Obviously, you know, great support from yourselves. Generally, as we said, the model is regional councils working in partnership with their territorial authorities, and we're just really starting to get some momentum of that here in Hawke's Bay. As of last year, this is all pre-LTP, these pictures. Wairoa and Central Hawke's Bay not on board, but we're hearing some change there, and hopefully if we can shore things up with Napier, then we've got lots of green green through there, but we're working with the vast majority of councils in New Zealand with this program now.
Kristen, from the other LTPs that are happening, are you seeing, say, Bay of Plenty come on board, or?
Bay of Plenty Regional Council haven't really been on the front foot with building relationships with their territorial authorities, so they've actually got quite a situation there now with Enviroschools, and to be honest, James, we're not quite sure where that's going to go. So we've got a bit of not quite a crisis, but certainly a bit of a crossroads there. In Northland Regional Council have taken a really strong stance, and they seem quite happy to hold it and are resourcing it quite heavily. So, and their district councils are under quite a bit of financial pressure, so that seems to be working there. So they're sort of operating slightly differently, but certainly the model that we see working well is regional and territorial working together. Okay. So Enviroschools has been around 20 years. We're very sure it's working. With the central government support we've had, we've been able to undertake quite a significant body of research and evaluation, which has really reinforced what we've known anecdotally, what we've been seeing over the past couple of decades. And what we're going to move into now is just a bit of an overview of our latest piece of research, which is the 2017 census. So, huge endeavour, quite a substantial questionnaire sent to over 1,000 Enviroschools in Term 4. We made the decision not to do exactly the same as the 2014 census. We decided to move away from trying to get comparing results, because we wanted to ask some different questions this time. But we built on what we did in 2014. We've had great support externally. We know it's really robust. Incredibly high response rate, so 76% across the country. This is teachers working in groups, 2/3 of people filling it out in a group. This is like 50 questions, including qualitative, and people spent a considerable amount of time on this. Our evaluators said they've never seen anything like it in terms of people's willingness to put time into the survey. And had a great result here in terms of response rate.
88% on what
Yeah, so that says itself in a lot about what school staff think of this program. So what we know from the census data is every Enviroschool in the country is doing something about waste. The vast majority are growing and using their own food. And then we've got a range of, they're transforming the physical environment in their school. They're doing something about biodiversity and biosecurity, water health, harder areas to work in, energy and building. They're still making changes in those areas. And it's not just sort of physical environmental things. There's huge involvement in cultural changes and social changes, and also economic changes. And we'll drill down into a few of these now, but really gratifying. And I think what was really important is that on average of these 11 different areas, Enviroschools are involved in 9 out of 11. So the programs are very broad in what schools and centres are taking on to do in their communities. So, obviously, of interest to yourselves as a regional council, biodiversity restoration and biosecurity actions. So, this is everything from having their own nurseries, doing planting, creating particular habitats for animals, often working on what might be an endangered species in the area. We're increasingly seeing animal pest control as part of what's happening. Obviously, with the growing predator-free movement, this is I think we're going to see more of this. Whole range of things. Water conservation, water health as well, really high. Over 80% of Enviroschools active in this area. Obviously, big topic here in your region. This encompasses both actions to conserve reticulated town supply water and actions to restore water quality. So very much a sort of a 3 waters approach. Also awareness of what's stormwater is happening, and what we knew from those that responded to the survey, they'd done around 20 kilometres of riparian planting and around 5 kilometres of fencing along waterways. So increasing in terms of the question earlier about involving schools in this. It's happening, and we want more of this happening.
And are the Hawke's Bay responses, Kristen, available to Sally to drill into?
Yeah, she's got quite a lot of detail about
Right.
all of this. Yeah, yeah.
So I think there's some things there in water we'd want to see a bigger focus on
Yeah.
and bigger effort, particularly when I think about stormwater awareness. You know, that's a huge priority for us, not only within Enviroschools but community-wide. We seem to have very low levels of awareness about the impact of people's behaviour and choices on stormwater quality.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's part of the value of doing this research, James. It means that as regional coordinators and even at the school level, you can see what individual schools are doing, and we can start to tailor program development or see areas that we could build on. So it's extremely useful data in a range of ways. So as we said, food, you know, there's even schools with their own bees, obviously fruit and veggies, increasing number of chicken coops popping up around the country. And what we've noticed with the sharing of food is that this can create quite a lot of social awareness in children and young people when they start thinking about food, maybe the fact that people in their community might be hungry, perhaps they've got a food stall, what do they do with that money? You know, it's creating quite a lot of social awareness too once you get into a whole cycle around food. And as we said, the physical environment, so a big part of Enviroschools is it's not just about something that happens in a classroom, it's about what messages, and this is often called the hidden curriculum, what messages are in there and what people are doing and what the buildings look like and what the landscape looks like. So often a big focus in Enviroschools is taking action to create physical environments in the landscape of the centre or the school that are inspiring and interesting, and that the children themselves have had say in creating. And huge lot of project management learning in that, where children can envisage an idea and work with the caretaker and staff to make a real change in the place that they spend quite a lot of their time. So increasingly seeing schools able to take action in the area of sort of energy, which includes transport and including some on-site generation. I think you've got some examples here.
Napier Intermediate, they recently had a whole lot more solar panels installed on their roof, and that was a student-led project. When the Napier Intermediate was rebuilt, they did put some solar panels in, and the students investigated the option of increasing that, and in the last few years those prices have come down, and they investigated it and put together a proposal to their board, and they were installed. So yeah, seen that.
And that's exactly the sort of thing we want to see happening. Young people, you know, not solar panels don't just pop up on the school in the holidays and they know nothing about it, that they're an integrated part of the process. So lots of things happening in the environment. You know, schools strongly involved in social sustainability. So as I said, around food, often that's led to sort of recipe swapping sessions, ways of connecting culturally if there are different communities from different cultural backgrounds in the school. Often Enviroschools are involved in charitable actions, donating time, raising money for certain causes in their community. Quite increasing sort of things around social justice, so maybe schools, students getting really interested in fair trade and promoting that, and you know, lobbying the teachers to move to fair trade products in the staff room, and probably getting on their parents' case, and yeah, so a whole range of being socially active in terms of a fairer, equitable society. Cultural sustainability, so the integration of Māori perspectives is a foundational part of what makes Enviroschools what it is, and so we are pleased to see that almost every Enviroschools is active in cultural sustainability, and that includes embracing Māori perspectives and understandings, but also reaching into other cultural understandings. And I think Hawke's Bay is really strong in that here, Sally, yeah. And you know, we live in a world where economics is part of our day-to-day reality, and children and young people are grappling with this through Enviroschools. You know, they are looking at fundraising through making their own green products. They're looking at, if they're running a school gala, well, what's the sustainability plan around that? Is there a zero waste plan? You know, are we using local products? You know, so they're raising their awareness in a whole lot of ways about how to have a sort of a green lens on economic activity. So one thing we did compare between 2014 and 3 years later, which was really gratifying to see, is the portion of people involved. So the bottom line, other staff, involved, non-teaching staff, 3 years ago 30%, now 45%. Students, growing number of teaching staff involved. So what we're seeing is that in that 3-year period, the program had deepened its reach within each school, within each centre, with, rather than just a couple of interested teachers, there were more and more people within that school being involved actively in the program, which is exactly what we want to see happening.
Can you say more about that? When I meant to ask that question when you say a school has signed up to be in the program, is that basically a commitment by those teachers who are interested? Is it what does it actually mean?
It's quite an well, they sign an agreement, and the principal, the board need to sign it. And so that's quite an undertaking that they're signing up to. We expect from them in return. It is a big commitment for a school if they want to embrace it fully. The more of the teaching staff who understand it and are part of it, the better it will run. It's very difficult if you've only got one person engaged.
So you would have quite a long process
Yes.
to actually have conversations about what it really means and make sure it's well understood across the school, that it's not just one teacher that's keen on it.
But teachers could, for whatever reason, opt out. I just don't want to do this. I don't.
They could, yeah. And we make it clear, that it is such a commitment. We won't just, if they don't understand that commitment, it can be tricky. It won't be sustainable for them.
So then what does it mean that only 56% of teacher staff, is that a measure, an average per school? What is that 56%?
Yeah, so if you look at an early childhood context, it will be basically all the teachers will be involved. If you look in primary school, I think we've got about 70% of teachers involved. But once we're working in secondary schools, big, department-based things, and that's really pulling the average down essentially. Secondary schools, it's much more pockets, and we're still working on growing from those pockets. So there's a little bit behind it. So it's a good question. Yep.
So for instance, here we've only got Tamatea High School is our only secondary school, and we have two teaching staff who pretty much are running it through their horticulture students, and so it's just sort of very small. But it's a start.
It must be hard for a secondary school in a sense, because it doesn't align naturally to the curriculum. For maybe the biology teachers or something like that, or the geography teacher, there might be an of alignment to the curriculum, but for so many of the teaching staff and the way that school operates overall, find time.
We're really trying to help secondary schools see how they can take a cross-curricular approach, particularly at years 9, 10. So there's a great secondary facilitator in Northland, and we're putting a bit of national project money into this because she's done some amazing work with secondary schools, getting all the departments together and getting whole cross-curricular. Because if you think about the things that schools are doing, you can be doing math, science, English, you can do art, you can do everything through this lens. You've just got to get these teachers working together. So that's where we're trying to go in secondary. At senior secondary, there are achievement standards in environmental education for sustainability at that sort of year 12, 13 level. So there's achievement standards, and then in the more junior secondary, we're trying to build this cross-curricular approach. But they're big, busy places, secondary schools, and they've got a lot going on, so it takes time. It's not a quick win.
Just on that, the principal from Iona College, I'm meeting with her tomorrow. She's keen. Some of their students have approached her about being in Enviroschools, so I'm going to have a chat to her about that and just see what might
be a lot easier for a private school, I imagine, just the nature of the extracurricular work that they do, and the greater control they've got over the sort of the school environment and what the students do, I imagine, far more conducive.
Already been working with some of their students on other projects with the Tainui Reserve. I've made that connection with Hastings District Council. Their students are going in there and doing some work, some riparian planting, which will be really good. So the principal's seen that and is keen to investigate a bit further.
And as the program gets stronger and stronger in primary schools, what we start seeing happening is that the students themselves start looking for it as they move through their schooling, and that starts to create some change as well. So a lot of connection with external organisations, a wide range of external organisations that Enviroschools are working with, councils, community restoration groups. But one of the things that was really interesting about this is that where there's a definite correlation. Schools are saying this is a thing that they really value about Enviroschools, and we've also found that there's a correlation between the depth of practice, the range of things that schools are doing, and how connected they are to their community, which, instinctively we knew that, but the research is really reinforcing some of these things for us. Outcomes-wise, there's a huge range of sustainability outcomes. We've seen a lot of things that are happening in the physical environment, but we're also talking about social, cultural, economic. So we had a whole lot of questions in the census about to what degree is Enviroschools influencing. So, children and young people initiating and taking action on sustainability issues, motivation to learn, teachers working together. Enviroschools is really positively influencing those things. Ethics being a key part of people's decisions, so that kind of, that constant decision making every time we go and buy something, what's in our head about where it's come from and who's made it. Health and cultural things, we're really pleased to see significant influence of integrating sustainability into the strategic planning at the sort of board level. So there was some really interesting results in this area, and there are a number of questions, so there's a lot of detail, but suffice to say it reinforced the things that we wanted to see happening, but also obviously there's some things that we can see we want to work on more. So we also asked participants what they valued about the Enviroschools program, what they most valued, and they rated these things. But what came out really strongly was having a facilitator that they work with. Teachers really value having an external person coming in as a coach, mentor, support for them. The ability to tailor the program's been important.
Yes, yeah, because every school is focusing on something different, and so we can tailor it to whatever their needs may be.
Yeah, it's authentic, meaningful learning, which is, really important for good teaching. So, student-led, we've been talking about that, long-term nature, the involvement of community, and the quotes here are from Hawke's Bay schools and some of the things that they said in the recent census. The typo for me. Sorry, out, not out. Yeah, and a big part of what makes Enviroschools different is the networking. It's not just a school working in isolation. Sally and her team are bringing schools together with community projects, and that's a big part of what makes it a bit different to some of the other things.
Earlier in term 2, Kirararu School, who are wanting to be an Enviroschool, went for a visit to Sherwood, and so the Sherwood students gave these kids a tour of the school, and they had a wonderful time, and then they presented to their teacher and they did their own PowerPoint report and presented it to their principal and teachers. This is why we want to be an Enviroschool. So, that's lovely.
Yeah, it's heartwarming stuff, and it's also for us really important stuff, because this is children being empowered with, if they've got something that they want to see happening in their world, how do you do it? These are really important life skills. It's all very well to have a good idea and want to make some change, but you need to have the wherewithal to bring people along with you and influence decision makers and organise things, and those are the things, that's what children are learning through this program. And that's probably quite enough of me talking to you.
We good? Questions?
Well, no, not so much questions, but I'm really excited to see that Enviroschools includes the 3 legs of the stool, not only the environmental but also the social and economic responsibilities of to be a good citizen.
Yeah.
You've got to be thinking of those things all the time, and that's part of what a big part of what you guys are all doing. In fact, that is what you guys are all doing. So, thank you for going through that for me, because that's something I learned today. So it's all good. Yeah.
Councillor.
Just remind me of how many Hawke's Bay schools are enrolled again?
53.
53. Are they, the engagement with biodiversity, Hawke's Bay biodiversity, are they guardians or enrolled as guardians?
Any of the schools. I believe a couple of the Central Hawke's Bay schools are, but I don't know that it goes any further than that yet.
Is that a potential
Definitely.
Yes,
spot that they can be?
it's a great idea. Yeah. So we'll chase that up.
Councillor Curtin with a great idea.
This happens all the time.
But this would be 53 out of how many prospective?
In total, or
What would be perfect attendance in Hawke's Bay?
that's a hard one.
It'd be good to get it close to the national average. So, so it's 53 out of about 200. So it's about a quarter. So national average is a third. So I think there is probably some capacity to grow.
Yeah.
And I think Sally and the team is,
Especially in Wairoa and CHB, it will be a lot easier to bring those schools on, and if we have the funding we can actually go and market it, and if the schools are keen, they can sign up. We will be putting together perhaps a little application marketing campaign down in Central Hawke's Bay, and the schools that are keen may put forward a proposal and we can choose them. Central Hawke's Bay District Council would be keen to see the program grow by a couple of more schools in the next year.
It puts the split to urban-rural. My perception was greater
Correct.
rural
Correct.
participation.
And so I would like to see more urban schools, especially down in CHB, as part of the program.
Can you tell us why that is? Is it the lack of opportunity in urban situations?
It's quite an easy. I don't think it's a lack of opportunity, but it's a much easier fit for those rural schools to understand the program and take it on board. It's an extension of a lot of those kids' lives because they come from farms and they're used to a lot of outdoor activities. There's a smaller percentage of students, and so it's much easier for the teaching staff then to actually work with those students. But in saying that, the town schools have their own set of issues and needs, and they're obviously bigger. So yeah, it's just getting more interest from those town schools and that commitment.
This might be an absolutely mad idea, but there's so much happens at a local level at schools in this case that the rest of us just don't see, and it passes by unnoticed. Is it possible to do something like make an app that kids could all download onto their phones, because most of them have got phones these days, and they can see what's happening in other schools?
We are looking at some of those things right now. Actually, we're working with a really great communications company based out of Auckland, a couple of guys that are consultants. So we've finally found the right comms people to work with, and we are looking at those sort of things, how we spread the word and how technology can enable that. So we're looking at some of those ideas now. So no, it's an idea. Yep.
I think there's an opportunity for our council marketing communications team just to continue to push the not only what we're doing, but perhaps reaching into ratepayer households and parents who can also drive a bit of demand with schools as well. I think we possibly just look at how we build a bit of a marketing campaign to grow that enthusiasm in the community, because the thing that I didn't really understand when I was involved in this at the national level, working with Kristen around how you expand this nationally, is that there's a very, very strong philosophical foundation under the education system now, is that schools are autonomous and they decide what they want to do. So trying to issue edicts that you shall teach environmental education is something that the Ministry of Education runs a mile from, and it's highly contrary to the policy settings overall around schools being community run and led. So you have to actually generate the demand rather than a system.
It's a bottom-up pressure that you need.
Very much so.
Nevertheless, it's in the curriculum, so there's a structure, compulsory structure in it. Just thinking about those urban schools, particularly Napier ones, and you mentioned Hohepa coming on board, we're creating an outdoor classroom out adjacent to the Taipo stream, and we're looking to literally live stream into classrooms in that regard. But there's 8 schools that can use that as an outdoor, and I don't know whether those schools are actually enrolled with environmental schools, so I need to check that out with you.
Do you know which ones they are?
The Tamatea group, Tamatea Primary, Intermediate, High School, Tauranga Primary, Green Meadows, Arthur Miller, all of those.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and I think just the last sort of point on growth is that, with the, solid support from Regional Council and some increase in budget, and if we can get these relationships feeling solid and actually like a partnership with the TAs, not like they're just giving us some money and we're sending them a report. We want to get away from those transactional relationships. That's when Sally and the team can get out and promote the program. So as you're saying, we now feel like we can do that in the Central Hawke's Bay, and to some extent, because of some of the limits in capacity, Sally and the team haven't been out there advertising because there could be a groundswell of demand that we can't meet. So there's a bit of a balance there, but if what we're hearing from Napier, and we would like to get more on the front foot to be advertising this a bit more. Yeah.
One thing I do find, Chair, that kind of surprises me is how so much can be done on such a limited budget. Just it seems maybe we missed the boat on that in the long-term plan a wee bit, but the dollar values are not very high in comparison to other stuff that we're doing. And
We should downsize our land management.
cut the communications team by 1.
Not you, Drew. Thank you. Often its success, obviously, as you'd be well aware, it comes down to the passion of the people, and that's the teachers and the kindergarten teachers, those networks within the schools, and those parents that really do drive it because they believe it and they see it. So we equally rely on that passion to enable the program to do as well as it has done.
Yeah.
There'll be thousands of hours of paid Ministry of Education, teacher time involved in all this as well. So the overall investment by the region will be many, many, many times this. Yeah. I think just the model is that, we sort of facilitate and initiate and leverage all that effort by others, and that is something clearly we're trying to do more broadly.
Yeah. No, I was also... No, sorry.
All right, I think we need to move
Great.
along here.
Thank
you, Kirsten.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sally.
Great to see you all.
Thank you.
Great work.
Yeah.
All right, where are we here?
Future farming.
Future farming, item 12.
No one wants it.
Mr. Skirman.
So let's just skip over this one.
Skip over that.
Doesn't even get a rise from the chair.
Enviroschools.
Is this where we tell farmers how to farm? Is that the one?
Send them to school.
Nicely set up for you there, Tom.
Thank you for that intro, Councillor Curtin. Good afternoon. It's just in the context of some of the discussions that we've had today. I think the Future Farming initiative leads into those quite well, and I think I'll take the paper as read. I just want to make some just general observations. Is that there is a bit of history with this project in there. In the past, there was some strong signals of angst from sectors of the community that it in fact was a proposal that was coming from this organisation to tell people how to farm. But I think it's just worthwhile noting how much has changed, in the last 6 years, and I think we can see a farming community now that is much more aware of the changes that are happening and the needs for change. And I think we're also a number of presentations I've been to recently where it's quite apparent that the environmental regulation of this era is potentially going to have a greater impact on farming than the economic deregulation of the earlier times. And so you do have a community that kind of many of them started their journey in the face of Rogernomics, and they feel like they're ending their journey with another big mountain to climb. But I do see a much greater acceptance of the need to change. And look, in my own, recent, travels that I did, on my scholarship a couple of years ago, absolutely, highlight that these are just not local issues. These are global issues, and it's something that, farmers all around the world are dealing with. So through the LTP process, we did get quite a lot of strong feedback that various groups and sector groups were keen to make sure that this wasn't an initiative that happened in isolation, that efforts were made to reach out and engage with other industry bodies and groups that are working in this area. And so I think, and then the paper we've provided in terms of the process, what we're suggesting is that a sort of an ad hoc committee is pulled together to work to appoint a group, effectively a steering committee that can help absolutely complete those engagements, flesh out the terms of reference, really articulate, for themselves and back to this committee, what the purpose and aspirations of Future Farming initiative is in the first steps, and then from there, and based on their work, develop the full work program for the following years. So, look, I'm happy to take any questions, or just leave it open to your own discussion.
So probably the most operative paragraph is number 5, which does just summarize what the first startup steps will look like. And the goal would be to accomplish all of that sharper definition in terms of program governance, the whole Megillah, by year's end.
Yep.
Any discussion? Any questions?
We selected the 2 councillors involved there yet, is it?
Seeking your guidance on that. Nominations, volunteers.
Well, I think the chair ought to be immediately co-opted onto this.
This is volunteer day.
The chair of the Environment and Services Committee, or the chair of, yeah, I think so.
Fina, would you consider doing it?
Well, seeing we're just having a discussion today, so there's no decisions today. I'd have to put some bit more thought into it.
I'm just thinking, like, I'm aware that you and Debbie have raised some objections to it around not reinventing the wheel, etc. And I think it needs to have at least somebody who's got a pretty strong farming background to be involved for that reason.
We're not selecting today, obviously.
No, but I'm just inviting you to consider it.
I do say that the 8 people will be the key to this.
Yep.
It's, there'll be a lot of interest in who the 8 folk will be, so needs consideration. I'll think about it.
Okay. Any other advice? Okay.
So, look, we don't need a formal resolution of council to appoint the group. It's not an official appointment. So, just in terms of timing, Councillor Wilson, you're foreshadowing an expectation that that be subject to further council discussion and confirmation.
It's a big spend. I think it needs to have a formal discussion around it. Yeah.
So look, this committee will be reporting both in terms of things discussed under quorum and not under quorum to the council meeting at the end of July. Chair, just seeking your comfort that we don't stand up that group essentially until the end of the month, once we can formally identify.
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. That's good.
Okay. Enough said.
But just before we're moving on, though, we've got some of the proceedings of this committee going forward to council on the 27th.
Thereabouts, yes, end of the month.
This particular item won't have had double debate. Is there an intermediary meeting it could be, if
There
there's a
isn't.
need to...
There's no other council meeting until that meeting in July.
Nothing till July.
And look, our preference would be, from a staff point of view, to take it to council meeting at the end of the month so we can get on. We would like to make some progress. This funding is available from essentially last Sunday, and I have Councillor Wilson's challenge around spending this year's budget ringing in my ears, and so we don't want to delay in terms of getting all of our work progress.
So we press on with the paper to council.
Well, look, that would be our preference. We've had the opportunity for a discussion here.
Yeah.
We should hopefully...
Some councils have chosen not to turn up, so that's their problem.
They missed their opportunity for double debate.
Absolutely.
Could I just make an observation though? I mean, I'd be disappointed if we got a whole lot of presentation at the council meeting that this was the discussion that happened. This is, any of us can walk out now. There's no compunction to stay, really. This is just a general chat.
Yep.
So to present that then to council as we've had this chat actually is... we went through that last time, as you know. So.
No, it's not. It's not. This is not a substitute for...
Of course it's not. No.
Well, I think everyone knows that. Nevertheless, there's this issue on the table, so and staff want to progress it. So we might just have to consider that on the day. If there's a demand for a second debate, we'll cross that bridge.
I think the initiative itself has been debated extensively, and it's a formal resolved decision of council to proceed with this initiative. It's in the long-term plan. So, yeah, we need to focus the conversation on how best to execute as opposed to continuing to debate the merits of it as an initiative.
Okay.
No, James is quite right.
I agree.
Conversation closed. We'll go to, thank you, Tom. We'll go to biosecurity operational plans.
Thank you, Chair. Campbell's just going to quickly run us through this. I'm anticipating it'll be pretty short and moving quickly along with everything else.
You must have become an expert at cut and paste over the years with these things.
Well, I was just going to say that this one hasn't changed significantly, councillors, from the last one, although you will note that the dates are different.
1999.
But actually, I think what you'll find is that the next one will change significantly, and that will be as a result of quite an additional bit of biodiversity work that you have funded through the long-term plan, which in part I have responsibility for. But also other initiatives like predator-free Hawke's Bay and the implications of those for us in terms of our operational activities. But so look, in reality, it talks about Cape to City. For those of you who were able to be at the launch the other night, that initiative is now into its 4th year and has effectively created the predator-free Hawke's Bay context for us. And so that has been one significant bit of work in the last 12 months. Most of the other biosecurity work doesn't get a lot of profile, but it is operational business as usual, which is delivering really well. So you'll see in there reference to things like the rook control program, in the operational plan. That's going really well. We've seen over the last 10 years that that's been applied significant reductions in rook numbers. You'll see, things around the monitoring of rabbits, calicivirus and those sorts of things. So really this was just my opportunity to answer any questions you might actually have on the operational plan. So I'll leave it there and pass it to you folks.
Councillor Bevan.
Yes, I've got 2 questions. Has that new virus been introduced into Hawke's Bay? I think we might have had one previous report on, but I can't remember.
Yes, so and probably I think it was about 8 weeks ago, we along with so over the period of between March and May across New Zealand, the RHDV K1 or K5 virus was released, and in our region that was about 6-7 weeks ago we did that. It's too early now at the moment to be sure what the impact of that virus has been. It's largely transferred by flies and insects, and of course we're now into the winter months with less activity in that regard. But I suspect we will know whether or not it's had any real impact within the next spring, summer and then into the autumn of next year.
So is there a map that shows where it's been released, like of the, I don't know, the North Island or New Zealand or whatever?
Yes, there is a map. Well, certainly we've recorded where all of our points of release have been in the Hawke's Bay, and there was about 32 sites of release across the region. The collection of that data has been standardised across, I think it's Manaaki Whenua, who have collected that on behalf of all the other regional councils who have released, and not all have, some didn't. But yes, that would be available. I haven't got access to it right now, but certainly I could find it for you if you wanted.
Well, if you could just provide a link or something. That'd be,
Absolutely.
So my second question was in relation to needlegrass, which seems to have become a bigger problem than it was. Do you have any stats on the number of properties where we've discovered it now compared with, say, 4 or 5 years ago, so we can see the magnitude of the problem?
Yeah, so look, I wouldn't have right to mind the exact numbers of the properties which we have identified with chill needlegrass in the last 4 to 5 years, but if I can give you a rough context, it would be less than a dozen of the total number of properties over time. So if you look at the total number of properties in the region, and then you look at the fact that we've actually only had a dozen which we've found additionally in the last 4 or 5 years. It's not, the picture at the moment is one, well, there's two things. Firstly, the picture is one, not of huge numbers of properties being found with it in the last 4 or 5 years. So it's not like a rapid loss of ground in terms of chili needlegrass. But the second part of the picture is, and again, this is where the LTP has been really useful, you've provided additional resources for the biosecurity team, and part of that was targeted to chili needlegrass and additional monitoring and work. And so the second part of the picture is for us to actually identify and get involved more with landowners to see if they have got it on their farms. Yep.
Other comments, Councillor Wilson?
Just one, marmorated stink bug or other incursions, how much more heightened is our understanding of national response to such things, considering that I think the old stink bug job, there was a couple of ships have been sent back already, haven't they, this year? That got in here to be just...
Oh, it'd be devastating.
Be devastating, yeah.
Yeah, it would absolutely be devastating. The short answer is the brown marmorated stink bug and the program both of preparation for a potential incursion response and the research associated with the trying to find controls for it is run by MPI. So we're involved with that through the biomanagers group at a national level, but we're not, so we get updates on it and how it's going from time to time, but we're not directly involved in it.
So there is, I can tell you a little bit about it. The horticultural industries have probably spent the last, 2 years trying to persuade MPI just how serious a threat it poses. I think now they have the message, but the level of interception, despite those ships being turned away, the level of interception through customs, through freight and stuff is frighteningly high. They discovered, for instance, just in the last 2 or 3 months, that there was some machinery that came in, second-hand machinery, came in from Italy. It was transported from Auckland right through to Christchurch on a truck, and in Christchurch it was discovered behind one of the panels in the cab of this, I think it might have been a harvester or something like that. There were 50 live stink bugs that nobody had picked up, and we hope that none of them escape during the journey, but that's the sort of risk that we face. So there's a group being formed that's got representatives from all the major horticultural industries in the country and MPI who are tasked with responding if it is discovered, who put pressure on MPI to increase the level of surveillance of containers coming in, I think it's general recognition now it's the biggest single threat to horticulture in this country, and quite rightly they're taking it pretty seriously now.
The luncheon that Paul and I went to Horticulture Day,
Yeah.
this probably dominated 90% of the conversation
Yeah, okay.
of that meeting was this issue.
Yeah, Campbell, can you, how does, the biosecurity operational plan, does that fit in with the regional pest management plan at all, or is this a completely different thing?
No, so it fits in with the regional pest management plan, and basically the operational plan is a requirement of having the regional pest plan. So when you do the regional pest plan, within that there's a requirement to have an operational plan to show how you're going to actually deliver the activities within the plan.
Okay, now I'm conscious, of course, that the regional pest management plan is up for review or is been looked at very shortly. But I noticed in the regional control animal pests, you talk about the possums at 5% RTC, whereas in the proposed regional pest management plan it's at 4%, which is apparently of some significance, the difference in percentage.
The difference in percentage, well, the reason why it's in 5% in the operational plan is because at the time we were doing the operational plan, the review hasn't finished.
Yep.
But that's why it'll change next operational plan. But yeah, the shift from 5% RTC to 4% RTC is really driven by the fact that currently in our possum control program, we are starting to slowly see an increasing number of farmers who are probably getting quite relaxed about their control program, and that's simply as a result of 18 years of success and not seeing many possums. So part of it's actually about making sure that the pressure is still on. Bear in mind that 80% of farmers plus on the program are below 3% or below, so almost all are still complying. But the other part of this is actually saying, if you wanted to look at one pest which might be able to be eradicated in the next 30 years, possums in New Zealand is probably the pest, and that's part of this conversation around predator-free Hawke's Bay as well. So part of the 5% to 4% is that every 10 years now we were proposing that we might actually end up reducing it by 1% every decade, and so that you get 4 decades down the track and you've ratcheted it back to zero.
Sure, okay.
Yep.
So the other one is in the operational plan, there's nothing in there for like cats or specific mention of, apart from being in site-specific control animal pests. So I'm just struggling to tie the two together. That's all, because operational plan to me means something that we're actually going to do. So does that mean we're not going to be doing anything about feral cats? We're not intending to do anything about feral cats, but obviously we are.
So I think again there's two things here. The first thing is that at the moment the regional pest management plan hasn't been finalised, and so that's obviously a role you'll be closely involved in the next couple of months. But so that when it happens, that will include the opportunity for predator control areas to be created under the regional pest plan, and those predator control areas will target feral cats and mustelids. So that will happen, and that's the way that'll be set up. But right now, the only way we undertake control on feral cats is through the site-specific program. So that's why the current operational plan only includes it in that way.
Ah, okay.
Yep.
Right. Now I'm beginning to be enlightened. Yeah. As often happens.
So just as a matter of... sorry.
Councillor Curtin had his hand up first.
Campbell, just looking at your the animal pest operational plan, product subsidy scheme, range of weapons grade poisons that you are inflicting on the environment, have you got any advice about the course of action by one Miriam Clements and the prospect of 25 years of life imprisonment, financial forfeiture of crimes against humanity, extermination and genocide? Are we all covered for that? Have we bought our toothbrushes? Where are we at with jeopardy in approving this sort of dastardly measure?
So I think there's two comments I'd make around that. And the first comment would be that in my initial reading of the documents that have been circulated is that firstly, the named defendants include the Prime Minister and other senior leaders of parties. And I suspect that they will have a process underway now for them to respond to them being named as defendants.
So baby Neve will be 25 when she gets out of prison, is it?
Well, the second comment I was going to make, which relates directly to that, is that if you look at a number of the things that are quoted under the bits of documents that have come through, they relate to the context where someone is creating war crimes, genocide, or the use of weapons of mass destruction. And if you look at that context and then the context of our biosecurity delivery, I suggest that the two are significantly misaligned.
Not if you're a possum.
Significantly misaligned.
The legal tests for those crimes are obviously are pretty significant, and the use of 1080 is, it's empowered and enabled under the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act. It's approved by Environmental Protection Authority, and our ability to use it is supported by both the Resource Management Act and the Biosecurity Act. So there's a strong statutory basis for the use of the tool, and the likelihood of being able to prove crimes in relation to those accusations, I would have thought was negligible.
She was very polite, though.
So I was just interested in our follow-up question on the feral cat business. Is it possible for us to include in our predator control plans a requirement that domestic cats have that
Chip?
Be chipped, yeah.
So that is actually part of what has been submitted on, and Councillor Bailey and others will be reviewing in the RPMP hearings in the next couple of days.
Okay.
And different submitters have different views on that, and it'll be up to the hearings committee to make a decision.
Oh, so they can make a recommendation to include that in a predator control plan, and then it's to the council to decide whether they'll approve it or not.
As a hearings panel, you have delegated authority to them to make that decision, and they can make that decision if they choose to do
Should
so.
not be trying to prejudice our outcome any further than we already have.
No, these are innocent questions, Chair.
Going into this with an open mind. Thank you very much, Councillor.
Chair, just before we leave biosecurity, can I just advise councillors that as part of the Mycoplasma bovis response, we have the staff protocol, which I alerted councillors to. We've also purchased a range of a series of kits for cleaning, gumboots, gear, etc., for supporting people who are going on and off different farms regularly. So they're being deployed across the organisation. We've acquired a kit for Councillor Wilson and also one for Councillor Hewitt on the basis of them perhaps visiting neighbouring farms or other farms with some regularity. But the offer stands for other councillors if you think that you require such a cleaning kit because of the frequency with which you visit multiple farm properties. So just let us know if you'd like one.
It's a big tandem trailer you got to tow around with you.
Do I have to have a ute?
You get underneath and shower and everything.
Or do I get a ute?
Pretty convenient.
All right. Thank you for that discussion. We're only discussing things at this point. Thank you, Campbell. And we look forward to your November report, which we also receive here at this committee, which will be on whether we're actually accomplishing anything, right?
100%.
Okay.
That's what we're going to mark you to.
Thank you.
All right, we are on to hotspots.
Yes, so Jolene and the team are going to come up and run you through a presentation. I'll just get rid of this one here.
Have you got your kit? Have you got your kit?
I've got to go up after this.
But did Dean or someone give you a buzz?
He's going to train me. Is it? Big stick or something. Or his hat and...
What do you do with it?
Oh, that's good. Yeah. That's good. Where the hell is that?
Just while they're getting that set up, so this is a really useful summary of the year-end results for us. Obviously, there's a lot of programs here that are continuing, and we're just running through it, the detail of how they're going to carry on, some of which are long-term commitments like Tūtira through the Freshwater Improvement Fund, some of which may carry on depending on current negotiations like Whakaki, and others like Ahuriri, where we've had such a huge success there that we want to ring fence it as part of our integrated catchments program, keep that funding flowing through to it, and use that as, if you like, a really visible catchment close to our urban centres to sort of highlight the activities we're doing. So it's been a massively successful program, given it was, you nicely all sort of dropped it on us at last minute, and we thought, crikey, how are we going to spend all the money? And we've done it and produced some really, really good results as a product of it. So Jolene will run you through, and I think Andy might be part of this as well with Jose. So all yours.
Good afternoon. Before I do a final summary, I'll get Jose Bayer, a design engineer here, to go through what he's done for the marine section of the hotspot. So do that first.
Thank you. Can you hear me there?
Yep.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to go through quickly about what has been the progress on the main focus on the coastal environmental issues. Basically laid in the roadmap, the research roadmap which is being released lately, the Marine and Coastal Group Research Roadmap. And the main issue is basically what that picture shows, which is can I put that? Yeah. It's related to sediments and nutrients going into the bay, as you probably are aware of. So we got a problem here, and the main problem is the lack of knowledge and understanding of the effects of nutrients and sediments in the bay. And what we are focusing at the moment is about sediments and starting to see the impacts in the ecology as well. So what we've been doing, it's going through a series of planning and trying to understand the physics of the problem and come up with a strategy to start with this. So we're basically interested in studying the past effects and what's the state of the sediments, inputs and depositions in the bay in the past. So we're thinking about doing that through some measurements like sediment cores on the bay to see what's the depth of those deposits and whether we find life buried under those deposits. Some extensive literature review. We've found out a really good reports from even dating from the 1960s, which we need to go through and in order to understand what the process has been in the science through remote sensing and modeling and erosion studies, because we need to understand what the amount of inputs of sediments have been going into the bay. So on the present, we need to undertake monitoring. So we're probably going to start doing a permanent monitoring campaign on the seabed ecology and on the sediments that get deposited into the bay. And for the future, we need to use tools like modeling in order to include the scenarios of land use change, sorry, and climate change. Well, the main objective was to develop an understanding of the effects in the seabed ecology produced by sediments and nutrients into the bay. What sort of tools and resources do we have for this? We're thinking about involving different human resources types, like such as internal work, consultants, and also PhD and master students, because the issues that we're dealing with the physics around the sediment transport and deposition of fine sediments are quite I guess, difficult, and we have lots of uncertainties and unknowns. So we do really, I think that we need to go through a research path where we go slowly, well, not so slowly, but building knowledge about what are these processes and what are the effects, and not really going directly into some modeling without really understanding what are all the processes. So for that, we need to get some good data, and probably from a number of years, and probably waiting for a couple of floods to come and to pump quite a few sediments into the bay and measure that. Funding, well, I'm not really involved directly into the funding, but you might want to correct me if I'm wrong. So we got the hotspots funding. We might get this into the next LTP. And the current monitoring program, we could probably put some of these resources that we need to develop into that. And tools, we're thinking about doing modeling, monitoring, and remote sensing using satellite imagery preferentially. So where we're at the moment, so we've been basically trying to implement the roadmap that was developed, and developing an understanding of the physical processes and inputs that will be required for modeling. We started doing bathymetry, a bathymetric survey, seabed mapping, seabed sampling, and satellite image analysis that we contracted out to Cawthron.
Excuse my ignorance.
Yes?
Bathymetry.
Bathymetry.
What's
Bathymetry. That's measuring the levels, so the depths actually of the bay. So with an echo sounder.
Yep.
Yeah. So we got data, but it's from the 1950s, I think, and we need to get some updated. And we've got we had a few consultations with about quotations and methodologies with different consultants and the university about different approaches that we might take to tackle some of the issues, some of the questions. And also being at Vision, which they've done some modeling for the port, although we haven't really been too successful with getting the results directly from the port. There are some contractual and some differences in there. With MedOcean, DHI, and the University of Waikato from where we might get an agreement to get some PhD students to do some of the research that we're planning. I understand there's some expectations about the development of a hydrodynamic model that will solve lots of the questions. So what we come up so far is that we've decided that pull back a little bit that and trying to understand better the system, the physics, before actually engaging in heavy modeling, because it's expensive and really time-consuming. So we decided to do extensive literature review first and start gathering data before actually doing the modeling, basically because one of the things that we need to understand when we do models is that if we put rubbish in the model, we'll get rubbish out. So we don't want that. So we need good measurements to calibrate and validate the model, and we need good measurements as well, and estimates to see how much inputs are going into the bay. Thank you.
You mentioned a couple of times trying to gain a better understanding of the physics of the bay. In that respect, you're talking about like currents and flows and where all the sediment lies and the interaction in that respect, or?
Yes. Basically, we've got a general understanding of what sediments do. So basically, they come out from different sources, like mainly rivers during big event floods, and they might deposit somewhere in the bay as an initial place, then get reworked by waves and currents and during extreme events, and then get deposited somewhere else. So we need to understand very well those processes in order to choose which models would actually be adequate to represent those processes. By saying that, the actual state of the art in the modeling is not really, it gives lots of different variety of answers in the results. So I personally don't really believe models unless they prove the contrary. So, and the way to prove that it's with measurements.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I've got a question as well. In our LTP presentations, you were talking about 7 million cubic metres, tonnes of sediment being washed out into the bay each year. There was a paper that we had earlier today that said 3 point something, half of what you were saying.
Yep. So the difference is that the 7 million is across the entire region, the entire yield. The 3.2 million tonnes of what we've determined is our most highly erodible layers through SEDNet. So it's just a further breakdown.
Okay.
It's because, look, there's 1,000 ways you
quantum of the worst part.
Exactly. There's 1,000 ways you can cut and dice it, but it's just saying in those worst parts that we want to target for our erosion control activity, that's how much. And you'll recall the estimates are if we deal with a third of that land area, about 100,000 hectares, we'll halve the yield.
Yeah. I wanted that too, actually, Peter.
So I think there's more to come, isn't there? Yep. So maybe if you just rattle through.
Yep. So I'm taking the paper as read. If there's any questions, fire them at me. But to start off, just wanted to say thank you. Thank you to the councillors for making this happen, for approving the paper, and thank you for your support, and for those that came and helped at workshops and planting days. We really appreciated it. And also to the staff. The staff have been fantastic. We've got some really neat people working really hard to achieve some really big goals. So it's been a journey and it's been a great pleasure. So you gave us $1 million. We completed $1.4 million. So that was really exciting to see that figure come through. Staff have also mentioned that they've noticed an increase of awareness out in the community. People are coming to them. They've heard about this hotspot program, what's going on, what can I do on my land? So that's really positive. I can take some questions and then put a video on.
Did we have the video? Have we got the video? Maybe.
So I have a question regarding the Arari hotspot. The items 50, 51, 52 talk about some catchment works that involved wetlands, riparian planning, fencing, and so forth. And I just note that the council expenditure to that was 128, and the 12 landowners involved 87. I looked at that, and it struck me that are we being overly generous with our 75-25 split that we're talking about making with our $30 million of riparian planning and fencing? I mean, these guys ponied up a substantial chunk of money, and now they're going to learn that, wait a minute,
They should have waited.
we overpaid here. We only need to put up 25%.
Yeah. So it's an up to. It's not that's the ceiling.
So just give Jolene credit for being a good negotiator.
I can't take credit. It was Andrew Burton.
So it's absolutely an up to, and I would expect that in very short order, as I described earlier, we get to the point where we're running out of money, we will further refine it. Where we may say, look, our most critical areas retain a pretty high subsidy rate, and the areas that are perhaps not as significant for us have less. You know, we may graduate it, and we'll come back to you with that advice for a refinement of the policy.
Not only there's more, this is undercounted significantly. If we added in the lower typo planting and spending, it'd double the amount of spend and at least double the amount of plantings.
This is just for the hotspots project, what we spent.
Just the region.
This is not region.
Are in the hotspots.
And also that particular one, you've also made mention in there that ongoing cost for maintenance works, which are also quite a big chunk of what gets spent on those planting things. Yep. I do have a question, John. In the Tutera one, and I'm only asking this because I know I got quizzed about it by members of the public last time we did an update. Page 74, the box, project management role, consents, admin and governance group costs. At $468K, you've got that over 4 years. So in terms of the project management role, that's a one FTE or a half FTE?
We allocated for project management being one full-time person.
Okay, yeah. and then adding all those other bits and bobs in there, it does mean that we're paying someone 140,000.
No, so we've pulled in all the admin costs that are associated with the project
Yeah.
and the consenting costs.
Yeah.
So the FTE probably would have been budgeted around 120K, but that's not all salary. That covers the overhead, probably vehicle included, IT support, all the other HR support and everything
Yeah,
else.
no, absolutely. I get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, so I got hauled over the coals for that last time we did the report.
Right.
So I just sort of asked the question and I got the answer so far.
That is the risk of having reports that go into a great deal of detail.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy with it. I'm really pleased that there's members of the public that actually are taking these things seriously and looking at, as you said, the public's rising awareness of what we're doing there is really encouraging. And in saying that, paragraph 7, 8 and 9 of this report, I think are really, if I was a member of the public, I'd be looking at those really carefully and going, this is really cool. Because I think that says a lot, positive encouragement from our communities. That's really neat to see.
Yeah. It's keeping those doors open.
So what are you most disappointed with?
Time. You want to achieve so much. There's so little time.
Progress at Whakakē.
Preach.
Whakakē perhaps taking more engagement than we had anticipated has been our biggest challenge. So we're a year down the track and we've done some stuff, and we'd really hoped that we could have got the deed grant signed up for the 5th and everything up, locked and loaded and up and running so that we could leverage our spend against the Crown's. We still haven't got to that point. There's a recent hui last weekend that was hugely positive, and it's looking like now we've got a clear line of sight to a project and some consenting activities to get through that'll get us down the track. But of course we've spent money in the process, and we've got some good stuff done that we can't leverage off the Crown, so that's been the frustration.
So is any of that money jeopardised by, I couldn't quite tell from this whether
Well, it means
MFE money was...
Yeah, so if we've spent $1, that's $1 we're not going to get off MFE in terms of the one-to-one leverage. So for every $1 we spend, we lose that leverage off the Crown. So that's been at risk, and we've done it just to demonstrate progress.
But a very small proportion of the overall projects.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just on that, Chair, can I give you just a little bit of a guide on that? The WEAR, don't put up all the WEAR options again. I think the community gave you a pretty good steer. They want one, and they want it down the end. And me sitting in that room the other day, the power brokers are saying, get on with it. So don't put up any more. Don't go back to the Iwatia one, in my humble opinion, because frankly, you're just muddying the water. And get your priorities right. Get the WEAR in first before we start talking about mobile wetlands or whatever.
Yeah,
all those are nice to haves at the end. If you can fix that water inundation issue at Iwatia and get the two hapu working together more, because one's not pissing the other one off regularly, there'll still be a bit of that, but it won't be anything to do with us or the lake, hopefully. I think you'll go ahead in leaps and bounds. But putting up that option, trying to appease everyone, sometimes in this stuff you just got to get on with it. And there's a majority want it, I'd push on.
Sage advice, yep.
We'll run through the video.
Just on the measures, we've got a lot of inputs, and that's obviously natural in the early stages. But looking forward, when do you think we could start looking at some data, or at least some outcomes for particularly sedimentation? And in this instance, it's the Whakapamatis removal. What has been the actual impact of that? So, are we looking this time next year to have some inclination as to what's happening?
Oh, yeah, I don't know that we'd want to sort of after 12 months. But look, the good news is we've got really extensive monitoring in these areas. So in the estuary and Tutera and the places where we're most active, we've got good, robust monitoring programs that'll give us some signals. I think we would probably have to reflect on that and come back to you with a... but look, maybe in 12 months' time we are starting to see a bit of a signal of some improvements. But this stuff, particularly sediment, does take a little while to work its way through the system. So acutely aware that demonstrating progress is key. I can't give you an absolute commitment as to when that's likely to happen. The earliest we can do it, we will, because we absolutely want to see that ourselves as well. So we do have a video that, do you want to, that we've pulled together, just kind of reflecting multimedia and social media is the way to go, and people like that stuff, and it's helpful to put it out there, and I'm sure you'll all latch onto it through Facebook and share it amongst your friends.
I've got no friends.
In our 2017-18 annual plan, we allocated $1 million to kickstart action in 6 hotspot areas. Regional Council staff, community groups and partners have worked hard to get activities underway that protect and enhance our region. The Ahuriri estuary is a national treasure. Our land science team analysed this catchment to create a plan for sediment and nutrient control. Working with 14 landowners, we built over 7 kilometres of fencing to keep stock out of waterways and planted 5,500 plants for erosion control. The Regional Council, Mana Ahuriri Trust and the Department of Conservation removed 216 tonnes of invasive marine tube worm, greatly improving water flows between the upper and lower estuary. The Karamu stream, including its tributaries, is a highly valued catchment in Hawke's Bay. Unfortunately, high levels of contaminants and nutrients end up in this waterway. Over the past year, we have enhanced 5 sites in this catchment. On the left bank above Whakatū Rail Bridge, we built a fence to keep stock out, sprayed weeds and replanted. After months of preparing the site, we organised a day to bring the community together to plant 8,000 plants. Pakipaki is a culturally significant site, visible as the south entrance to Herotonga Plains. We planted and fenced this enhancement location. Working with a local farmer on the Kāriwariwa Paritua stream above Mangaroa Marae, we fenced 700 metres of waterway to exclude stock. Working with representatives from the Te Hauki Marae, we produced plans for weed control, planting on the tributary to Lake Polkawa and connections to some important biodiversity areas. All of this work brings us a step closer to our long-term vision for the Karamu stream. The Tukituki River is important to the people of Hawke's Bay for lots of reasons. During summer, low flows and high temperatures mean toxic algae can form in this river, which isn't good for humans, dogs, stock or aquatic life. We have planted 4,000 native plants at the Hunt family wetland to demonstrate how these wet areas can be protected and enhanced on farms. We're working with Te Rongo o Te Hau Marae and the Takapo community to prepare Makerikeri stream restoration site for planting next winter, with stock exclusion, gabion baskets and weed control. Papanui stream has the highest dissolved phosphorus levels of the Tukituki waterways. Working with landowners, we've put over 5,000 plants into the river margins and gully areas here. We've trialled a 1.3 kilometre flexible electric stock fence along Tukituki River. The design means it's easier and cheaper for landowners to fix after flood damage. These Tukituki catchment projects offer solutions to landowners and help to improve water quality in the Tukituki River. Our coastal marine environment is where we fish, swim, surf and boat. From our port to our reefs and fisheries, Hawke's Bay people have a close link to their coast. We needed more information to know what happens to soil and contaminants when it reaches the ocean. Between Tongoyo and Cape Kidnappers, we took 87 samples of the seabed at depths between 10 and 50 metres to understand how sediment travels in Hawke's Bay. We asked Cawthron Institute to look at old satellite images of Hawke's Bay, captured daily over 12 years. The results showed coastal marine areas where the water stays dirty, but where it's highly productive. We've also learned how water temperatures are influenced by ocean currents. The Wairoa Hard is a significant fish nursery. After being closed to fishing for almost 40 years, we needed a better understanding of what this area looks like now and how it still supports the services and functions it was protected for. Working with NIWA, the Ministry for Primary Industries, in Hapu, we used a vessel with a multi-beam echo sounder for 12 days to map the Wairoa hard. Now we can use this information to see how we can improve habitat quality and the overall health of our marine systems. Whakaki Lake is the largest freshwater lagoon on the east coast of the North Island. We've worked with the local community on stock exclusion and native planting, aiming for the Whakaki Lake waters to become clear again and aquatic vegetation to recover. Together with the Iwitia 2N Trust, we're building a 3.7 kilometre fence around Lake Paraoa for stock exclusion. The Whakaki community and Hawke's Bay Regional Council has worked with Dick Finney from Heri Heri Tow Station and the Whakaki Lake Trust on a stock exclusion project to fence off part of the Rahui Channel. Once famous for eels, freshwater mussels and flax, Lake Tutera and Waikopero were highly treasured by tangata whenua, who found physical and spiritual sustenance there, alternating seasonally between Tongoyo and the Mangahururu ranges. For recent generations of Kiwis, it's been a favourite recreational site for trout fishing, kayaking and other outdoor pursuits, with other popular reserves nearby. But too much soil and nutrients from the rugged ranges still finds its way into Lake Tutera. The water is often no good for swimming, has algal blooms, and is an unhealthy habitat for fish and eels. This is frustrating the Kaitiaki, Hapu, and wider community. We are working on a 5-year project in partnership with tangata whenua to restore the mauri of Lakes Tutera and Waikopero to make them swimmable by 2020, building on the mahi done by Mangahururu Tangatu Trusts and Tutera Maina Iwi. Hawke's Bay Regional Council would like to thank all the organisations playing a role to reach the goals of these hotspot projects, working across Te Matou a Maui, our beautiful Hawke's Bay.
Cool.
Gee, just one last comment on Whakaki. 2N are really committed to fencing off their end of it, and by chance the chair of the Whakaki Trust has a lot of experience in honey and beekeeping, etc. So they're really trying hard to do their bit up there, and I just want to, while we're being recorded, make comment that actually the two hapu, while they have had the odd bit of push and shove, do work together pretty well on this project, and I think if we can get the levels right in the outset, we will unlock that opportunity to get into the dual funding. So it was a very good day. Thanks staff and everyone involved last Saturday for the presentation. Went really well.
Brilliant.
I
Thanks, Tim.
presume that's going to get put up on our website.
Yep. And on Facebook, so you can share it amongst your Facebook community.
All right, thank you.
Love that.
Thank you.
All good.
Last item, operational activities update.
So we'll just take this as read,
Take it
Chair,
as
and
read,
any
and,
questions?
Page 81.
Thank you, I've got a meeting.
Operational activities.
I don't think I had any questions.
I have one question about, on page 84, the Tutera Regional Park Post Pine Forest Harvest Plan.
Yes.
When this is dealing with what we harvested on our own property,
Correct.
and is everybody happy about where this plan is headed?
We were about to start harvesting, so harvesting hasn't
occurred.
hasn't commenced, but it's imminent.
I see the tracks,
Yep.
and yeah.
We've been having the roading constructed. Council agreed to a composite plan that included some radiata going back in, but also some diversified forest, including natives. So that has previously come forward. The reaction that's had with the community, I'm not sure. It's something I'd need to seek some advice on.
Talking of harvesting, in Mike 80's day, we went on a field trip up to Wairua, and on the way, we stopped and had a look at Hawke's Bay Regional Council forest that was completely landlocked and had no way of getting in to complete the harvest except by getting agreement from neighbouring properties. Whatever happened to that?
It's in the Tangoia Soil Conservation Reserve. To the best of my knowledge, that's still programmed in to be done. And Mike was going through the land use or the land access and covenanting issues that needed to be done, or the easement issues that needed to be secured, and the financial transactions with the landowners to get access to all of that. I'll need to follow that up and come back to you. But to the best of my knowledge, that was resolved and there's a program locked in for harvest.
Yeah, if you could, that'd be good to know.
I'd just like to, it's not in the work program, but I'd just like to say congratulations we had a couple of wins in the court the other day, did we not?
Sorry,
Did we have a couple of wins in the court the other day?
Had 2 successful prosecutions on Monday, yes.
Excellent. It was, that's been well received. The people, of course, the public feedback I've got so far is the fine wasn't big enough, but I said, no, the important one was we got the guilty verdict.
We have no control over the decisions that judges make. And
no, we don't.
Fines.
All right.
I think our discussions have concluded.
Thank you.
It's all good.
All right, so that's it.
That's it.
Have the rest of the day off.
All right.